Chapter 6, Storage. Our learning objectives today: identifying the proper storage temperatures and locations for each of our food types, explaining labeling, dating, and rotation procedures, describing the correct vertical storage order for raw and ready-to-eat foods, looking at things like refrigeration, where we have our ready-to-eat foods at the top, working all the way down to poultry at the bottom, and then applying FIFO, first in, first out, and the rules that we have to go by as to whether we keep foods to serve or discard them. We have some storage principles that we stay by: keeping food covered, labeled, and off the floor a minimum of 6 inches. This plays into several different things. So yes, we have to make sure in our walk-in coolers, in our dry storage, all of those shelves are at least 6 inches off the ground, so that way it's easy to be able to clean and sweep and mop underneath them. Plus it's a little more difficult for various different walking creatures to be able to get up and into our foods. But this also plays into if I have equipment and if I have china, glass, silverware, any of those types of things which are clean and ready for service, those must also be stored at least 6 inches off the ground. We want to prevent cross-contamination and time and temperature abuse with all of our storage. Temperature monitoring. We place thermometers into the warmest part of a cold unit and the coldest part of hot units. So what that means is that in my refrigerator, I'm going to place my sensor in the top of my refrigerator closest to the door. That's going to be the area that's most likely to get the most amount of warmth getting in, and also the cold air sinks, so it's always the coldest at the bottom of that unit. With the hot units, hot air rises, and so I'm going to have any kind of heat sensors further down to the bottom, just so that way I'm making sure that even the coldest area is at least at the minimum 135 in that case, to keep that food hot. We should be checking our temperature controlled atmospheres at least twice daily and recording it. If you don't record it, it never happened. When a health inspector walks in and they see temperature logs on your refrigerators, then they'll be happy because they see that there is control actively happening. And then calibrating thermometers regularly to make sure that we're getting accurate readings. Frozen storage. So we keep food at 0 or below when it's in freezers, and that means that food is frozen solid. Stored away from the walls to allow air circulation all the way around, and defrosting the units regularly. We never store food in thaw water. That is not a food permissible item. Dry storage should be maintained between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, so a cool room, and humidity should be at 60% or less. We should be storing food in sealed, labeled containers and keeping cleaning chemicals completely separate from our foods. We should always be inspecting for pests or for signs that pests could have been there. Labeling and date marking. This is where all ready-to-eat TCS foods, time and temperature control for safety foods, that are held in refrigerators for more than 24 hours should be labeled. I personally always recommend for my team that we label and date mark everything that we're producing just to be safe. It's really easy to be able to have something that we thought we would use up, didn't quite get finished, and gets pushed to the back of the fridge, and 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days later it's sitting back there ready to be pulled out and used when it may no longer be safe. But the law dictates if we have ready-to-eat TCS foods, so refrigerated ready-to-eat foods, then if it's going to be in the fridge for more than 24 hours, you must have it labeled and date marked. It should include the product name and the prep or open date of that product and the discard date of when it has to be thrown out. The discard date is once 7 days have elapsed at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or less, but that includes day one is the day that I opened that food or prepped up that food. First in, first out, FIFO. So this is where we must rotate our stock. We're going to use the oldest stock first, storing new deliveries behind the existing stock that's already in, and then removing expired or damaged products promptly. We don't want to have any of those products around because that could cause contamination or incorrect pulling where you may end up selling some foods which are contaminated. We want to perform properly the FIFO rules because it will help us to reduce wastage for our company as well, saving a lot of money in the long term, not throwing foods out because they went bad sitting behind new foods. Our vertical storage system means that foods are going to be prevented from dripping onto other foods and contaminating them to the extent where they have to be disposed of. We have our most protective foods at the top, which is our ready-to-eat foods. They're no longer going to have any more washing or a kill step cooking process occurring, so we must make sure that they are protected at all costs. They go at the top because gravity will always pull anything else to drip down. Then we go with seafoods and whole cuts of beef, pork, lamb, veal. Those also have to be cooked to 145 Fahrenheit. What you're going to notice on this chart is the lower that we go in the fridge, the hotter we have to cook the food to. The next shelf down, we've got ground meats and ground fish, and then following down to poultry and stuffed foods at the bottom. Those must be cooked to 165. They're the highest risk foods, so we must cook those appropriately. So we also store them all the way at the bottom so they cannot drip on anything else. Preventing cross-contamination. This is where we separate raw and ready-to-eat foods, use designated shelving, bins, and prep areas, and keep raw foods below cooked foods. Clean and sanitize spills immediately so that we don't have any cross-contamination. Storage of chemicals and single-service items. We're storing chemicals below foods or away from foods and any utensils or anything else that might come in contact with our food. Never reuse chemical containers for food. No using the large chemical container to go and add ice into it, to move ice around in the organization or anything like that. Protect single-service items from moisture and dust like flatware and straws. Dry goods inspections. So always check for moisture, odors, insects or rodent signs. Reject or discard contaminated goods, and store flour, sugar, and grains in sealed bins. Making sure that our dry goods are never exposed to excess moisture can be a significant disadvantage if you allow it, because those food items, if they do get moist, they can start developing mold. They can also start to encourage the growth of the bacteria that may be found on them. Things like rice that has Bacillus aureus bacteria growing on them. If it's bone dry, nothing can grow. Once it starts to become moist in any way, then they can. When we open packages, make sure that we reseal them tightly or transfer them to a food-grade container. Label them with the product name and the date opened, and never top off old products with new. Cooling and reheating when we're using storage. We always cool foods before covering or stacking them. Make sure you vent lids using shallow stainless steel pans to dissipate heat. And add ice or ice water baths can be used to chill things down. When we're reheating, we do it rapidly to 165 Fahrenheit within 2 hours before hot holding then occurs. We must review cooling, and that's going from 135 to 70 in 2 hours or less, and then from 70 to 41 or less in 4 hours or less. So it's 6 hours total, 2 hours and 4 hours, making sure that we go through the most dangerous part of the temperature danger zone quickest. Some specialty storage items we need to look at. When we're looking at shellfish, We store that at 41 Fahrenheit or less, and we're retaining the shelf stock tags for at least 90 days, just in case if there's been any kind of infection and contamination, because sometimes things like hepatitis A, which is related to shelf stock, these things can take that long to appear and then be investigated. Ice used for food equals food. So it's important that we make sure that the ice is treated as a ready-to-eat food. Always only ever using the scoop, and making sure that the handle doesn't go into the ice, making sure that no one uses any glass or anything else that goes into the ice machine. It's the ice scoop, or the ice scoop, whichever you prefer. Never use ice used for cooling for food. It will probably be contaminated. Let's take a look at some questions. A container of soup made on Monday and held at 41 degrees or less must be discarded by when? Sunday is correct. Which storage practice is unsafe? Raw chicken below ground beef, seafood above poultry, raw beef above ready-to-eat salad, or ready-to-eat foods on the top shelf? That's right, C is correct. Raw beef above ready-to-eat salad. Nothing ever goes above ready-to-eat foods. Dry storage should be kept at what temperature? 32 Fahrenheit, 41, 50 to 70, or 80? 50 to 70 is correct. It should be a cool room. The minimum distance food must be stored off the ground is 2, 4, 6, or 12 inches. It is 6 inches. When transferring sugar to a new container, you should A. Use an old label from an original bag, B. Write the new label with the product name and the date, C. Leave unlabeled if obvious, or D. Use an available container, any available container. It is B. Write the new label with the product name and date. So let's relook at some of the manager's responsibilities. So we are monitoring temperatures and logs daily. We are training staff on labeling and storage orders. We're correcting violations immediately, and we're inspecting storage areas regularly. So in summary, we maintain proper storage, temperatures, and labeling. We apply first in, first out, and the 7-day rules. We follow vertical storage hierarchy exactly, and we keep records and we monitor daily. And that's a wrap on Chapter 6, all about storage.